Welcome to another Round the Grounds episode. So it's part 2 of football as an ownership problem. We're joined by Greg and Steve, and we've got a new guest tonight, a fellow Wednesday fan. So we've doubled up on Sheffield Wednesday fans tonight. Joel couldn't make it, so we've got Rob from the 1867 group. So it's a pleasure to have you on, Rob. We'll just get the guys to introduce themselves again for those that have not watched this before. Obviously, as a part 1, we went on waffling for a good hour, and obviously picking up this one now, getting into the nitty gritty ownership and the EFL and what we can do about it as a football community. So, Greg or Steve, if you want to lead the way and just introduce yourself, a little recap. Who you are and what you represent.
Go on, Greg.
Go on. So I'm Greg Double. I'm a member of the Sell Before We Die Reading fan campaign group, which is basically set up to try and get rid of our errant Chinese owner who still is hanging around like a bad smell and trying to kill our football club. But brighter lights apparently ahead. We're in negotiations to sell, but he's still here, so we're still here.
And I'm Steve Hamilton. I'm the chair of the Bradford City Independent Fans Group. And we are owned by a German owner called Stefan Rupp, with a CEO called Ryan Sparks. And that basically forms our board. So we have our own problems at Bradford City. And hopefully we'll discuss a bit more about that and others tonight.
And obviously, Rob, first time on a show. Welcome on. Just give us a little reason why, obviously, 1867 group was formed. Obviously, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, so I know a little bit more about you guys. We spoke last week that the ownerships are sort of different, but bad owners type thing. So, yeah, just give us a little introduction.
Yeah, so I'm Rob. I'm one of the founders of the 1867 group. Sort of a group that comes together through social media unrest towards the chairman. We've sort of come together now, and there's about 20, 30 of us now at the minute, sort of organising potential future protests at the owner and the way that he's running the club. Obviously on the field at the minute, with Danny Rowe working wonders with what he's got. But it's more highlighting the issues off the field and what Dapon Chansiri has been doing now for the past 7 or 8 years. We feel now that we're slowly turning into the next Reading. We don't want that. So obviously the whole point of the group is to sort of highlight and make awareness of those sort of issues.
Yeah, and Greg, we spoke last week, obviously, Reading far down the line of what we could potentially be, but you spoke about it, that you could see it shaping the same, obviously, direction as what Reading was.
Yeah, I mean, it's worrying. I mean, Rob, you should take your words back. You should definitely want to be the next Reading, just not now. It's look, my biggest fear watching you guys and your campaign is people aren't clocking on to quite just how much trouble you could be in and how quickly it turns. And the bottom line is you only really get the fan engagement really come with you when it hits rock bottom. Or where, this sounds counterintuitive, but where you are a little bit more fortunate is you're not playing well on the pitch at the moment. And so that you'll find that your support will go up when everything on the pitch is rubbish, and you'll find it goes down if you put together a couple of wins together. And it's a similar sort of thing here so one thing we've been fairly relentless at doing at a campaign group is highlighting like the one on the pitch is kind of an irrelevance unless it's contributing to your financial success. To just making sure you speak to other football fans and you get to learn and you do a bit of the base work when you're not, as a campaign group, as popular. You go and do some of the boring stuff. And I think that's one of the best bits of advice we can give to another group is when you're sort of struggling for that cut through at the start because things haven't hit rock bottom, is go and do some of the boring stuff. Go and get your training ground made an asset of community value. Go and do that with your stadium. Go and speak to MPs. Go and speak to your local council and just start thinking of all the different ways you can protect the club, where if Chansiri does lose interest and leaves you in a horrible place, where you start getting these points deductions, and then worse, he wants to cash out and leave you in an even worse position. You've at least protected the things that make Sheffield Wednesday Sheffield Wednesday. But yeah, it's tricky because, funny enough, we were speaking about this last week. I still have a thing where Chansiri cares enough to be combative with the fans and to be, frankly, like a bit unpleasant. We knew we were in bigger trouble when Dayong and Dion Pang, his CEO, stopped talking altogether, and like worse things happen in silence than being outwardly antagonistic. But yeah, I think that's if the theme of the last chat was we're all different stages of fucked, it's about preparing to unfuck yourself as much as it is raising awareness. But I think from what I've seen anyway, you're getting a lot more cut through now just by being dogged and persistent. And yeah, look, you don't want to get to the point we've got to of being that desperate. It'd be much better if, as a fan group, yeah, you can be a bit more proactive with it as you go through.
Yeah, and we touched on it. Obviously, ownership, it is different. Obviously, Steve's what he's going through. Obviously, he's not really investing in the club. Do you just want to touch on that? Just a little recap.
I think the challenge we've had, Lee, is that we have a disinterested owner. The man is, he's got a few quid, shall we say? But he bought the club with another party. And the other party was more interested in the glory and, I know football aspect of things than he was. He was happy to just be in the background. Then this other party did some things that were untoward, and he fired that guy, and then became sole owner of the club. But we've had various statements. I think one in 2016 when this problem with Edin Ratic happened, where he said, I'm going to be a good custodian to the club. We're going to invest. We're going to get back to the Premiership, and all the things that a supporter, when in a club like Bradford City wants to hear. But he never delivered on those things, and instead of progression, we regressed. We dropped down the leagues. When he purchased us, we were, challenging for Championship football. We just missed out on a playoff. We lost to Millwall in the playoff final, and then it just saw us kind of fall from grace. And now we're languishing in League Two, and have been there for 5 or 6 seasons now. I think it is. I think we're coming into our 6th or 7th season in League Two, with a fantastic supporter base. So our challenge has been getting a clear plan for the club, with rumours circulating about his intentions for it, whether he wants to sell it. He's rumoured to want to sell it for £10 million. We're not worth £10 million. And that whether that's kind of like a brick wall in terms of another investor coming in and purchasing the club. But because we can't verify it, because he never speaks and he never tells anybody, it's been a real challenge. And I think what's happened is that over the last, Rob was talking about kind of supporter apathy before we came on air, and varying different stages. Our challenge right now is we either have fans wanting us to protest left, right, and centre, or a couple of results like Greg said, and they retract. And you rightly, it gets to a stage where it's only when you hit rock bottom as a club that then supporters realise we better do something about this before we lose it. But our challenge is a bit different to what Reading are going through, and what Sheffield Wednesday are going through. The guy, we're a sustainable club. We're not in any debt. Well, just released the figures. We lost 334,000 last year, which is pretty reasonable in football terms, considering others. But Stefan has been running the club on a sustainability model rather than let's get up the leagues model. And what fans can't understand is, why are you not investing? Because you'll get more money when you sell the club, if we're up higher up in the structure. So, as you touched on, different situation at the moment in terms of our ownership versus Reading and Sheffield Wednesday. But some of the problems are the same: lack of communication, not telling us things, doing bad comms, really strange kind of recruitment decisions, really strange managerial decisions. These are all adding up, and what's for us, it's been a build-up of apathy for like the last probably 5 years, and now that voice is getting louder and louder because fans have started to see that there are cracks in the armour, shall we say, and Bradford are not as solid as we would think, shall we say.
Yeah. And Rob, just before I lead on to a question about the EFL, just tell us what were your main concerns about, obviously, Chansey? It may seem like a silly question, but what led you to create the group and whatnot?
I think it's more how it's being run off the pitch. You know, recent financial figures at the minute, he's lost 140 million since he's took over the club, which is just incredible. I know he had a few years where he was just chucking money at it, but year after year, it's getting to a point now where we're wondering whether we're going to still be here next season. The whole debacle after Wembley when he sacked Darren Moore, we don't know what's gone on there, but you've killed all that momentum from a promoted team. Like, look at Ipswich, look what they're doing. I'm not saying we're going to be the next Ipswich, but you've killed all momentum getting promoted. And then you've had that torrid few months with Cisco where you lose 11 out of 13 games or whatever it were. And it's just bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And similar to what Steve said, he's gone quiet now. He's not said anything. He's not in the country. So it's kind of like, does he still care? Does he still have the motivation to carry on? Is he talking to people to sell us on? The last two protests we did, which were on Sky against Leeds and Plymouth, we didn't expect that sort of turnout at all with the Flyers, especially for the Leeds game, because obviously the results had picked up. Social media, it sounded like that nothing was going to happen, but to see an exact same response, if not a better response, inside the stadium for the game was quite motivating for us to carry on. I know we had issues outside the stadium where I had fans spit at me. I'm just handing out flyers for a protest. Like, at the end of the day, you've got your own agendas and your own like reasoning as to why you want Chansey here or not. So yeah, it's more the decision making. If he came out and gave us a vision of where he sees the club like in the short term and the long term in the next few years, then we'd be happy with that if he gave us some clarity to the fans. But there's no dialogue. The prices are going up every year. For my season ticket, it was £630 renewal at first phase for potential League One football. Now it's 700 and something, which I'm not going to pay. Like, simple as that. So, whatever it's getting more and more expensive, is going to drive out a generation of fans. We've sold 13,000 season tickets now at the minute, compared to last season, which was 21,000, 22,000.
So, that's a substantial drop as well.
So fans are starting to obviously see the cracks and starting to vote with their feet. So yeah, it's kind of a 50-50 scenario. Like, if we carried on protesting now while the team's fighting for safety, are fans going to get on board? Like you said earlier about the apathy, every football fan has an accepting sort of demeanour. If you win 5 games in a row, oh, why should I protest? But if you lose 5 games in a row, then everyone will jump on it. So if we get relegated against West Brom, for instance, the last home game, everyone's going to be like, oh, well, what were you doing? So you can't win in a way. So it's hard. It's like living two lives. So ever since we've formed, we've just had it week in, week out.
Yeah, that's brilliantly covered. So obviously ownership, we know about the stories with Berry going out of business. I think it's happening more and more. Owners, bad owners. What do you think, you guys, the AFL, how they handle it, and how they deal with bad owners? Leaving you down a rabbit hole, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, it's like, look, I'll be more diplomatic. Like, I think they are well-meaning but fundamentally useless, and it's look, put it this way, I don't believe the people at the EFL are out to kill football clubs. Like you know what I mean? You just like, I don't believe in like that sort of hard evil. Like, do you know what I mean? They're just not.
Yeah.
What they are is they are very, very they're pencil pushers, they're by the rules, they play within the rules and the guidelines, and they've got no ability to apply the rules creatively or to call emergency meetings and stuff like that. There's no drive to do something a little bit different when things hit the fan or go back to the club. So what we found is more, I don't know, and where I have some sympathy specifically in Reading's case of the EFL is for a while, De Jong presents as a good owner. Like he had money, he spent lots of money, and it's all sort of there. And what their rules and regulations are set up to be more effective against owners that don't have any money, as was the situation with Bury. And like it's better dealt to deal with shysters than it is people who spend lots of money and then lose interest and go. So like, look, it gets really complicated, but fundamentally, I think like I don't think from a they don't have the weapons in their armory to do anything impactful. Like they could say, prime example was when they said like, well, we're looking at disqualifying De Jong, and we went, oh great, that sounds fantastic. What does that mean? It means that he's got to sell the club in 28 days. Brilliant. Like this sounds brilliant. Like what cracking. Like let's do that then. He goes, what happens if he doesn't sell the club in 28 days? He's like, no, we don't know. It's never happened before. It's like, well, can you force him to sell? No, because that's against company law, right? And then that's when you realise that there's no teeth here.
Yeah.
And so their view was for us to start pushing towards administration, because it's the best way of getting rid of him. And that's the way that you can guarantee you take it out of his hands and you get creditors to call in their debts and essentially put the club into administration. And then sort of touching on what Rob says, you then have to make some decisions that aren't really yours to make about, are you willing to put your club minus 12 points, which could relegate or could put you in a position where you're going to start a season with minus 12 points, because that's immediate for administration. So look, bottom line is like, look, the EFL need help, and this is why we've been such passionate advocates for the independent regulator, because the EFL don't have the tools to remove. And if you start looking towards something where you can have tools to remove, but also like, look, I think I've always said for this, like whatever happens is going to be a bit late for Reading. We're going to end up being the example where new rules came in rather than benefiting from them. But you can start by making sure you don't get these shysters in the club. You can start by offering a license bit coming in. You can start by insisting that they lay down a deposit so the club can be run for, like, say, 3 to 6 months. If they do lose interest, there's almost like a safety fund for clubs to be found. And in that time that you could find a new owner, which I think makes a lot of sense if you've got that sort of money coming into the club. So you have that security fund, because that's what's killing us. It's the point at which you've lost interest. And that's the bit that I think Rob especially, and like Steve, maybe a little bit further down the line, need to be especially keen at looking at. It's like, it's not so much for as long as they've got interest, you're still always going to be sort of fine. The moment they lose interest and they stop doing the basics, like, if you get to a point where they say, I have lost enough money, which Chan Theory sounds like he's not a million miles away from, you've then got yourself into a really interesting situation where we've had, where it's De Jong is thinking, how can I get as much of my money back as possible? And that started off with ludicrous valuations of the football club, not helped by Walter-Mitty characters like William Story, who came along saying, I'll buy it for 50 million, which is 20 million above the asking price anyone can reasonably suggest. And apparently that set us back about 3-6 months, because De Jong is now holding out for 50 million for a club that is worth nowhere near 50 million quid. So it's all sort of there. But to answer your question more succinctly, EFL, not evil, but fundamentally toothless when it gets to a situation like this. That's why we've been big on the regulator, to try and stop it from happening in the first time. And when it does happen, you've got a solution to do it, which personally, look, I like deposits and rescue funds and slush funds in the same way that you would have in any membership organisation, that if something hits hard, you've got a hardship fund to help out clubs when they've been done over by their owners. But I can tell you for free, points deductions don't work, and fining billionaires 10 grand doesn't work. So go figure.
Yeah, and that leads me on to, obviously, Wednesday's had points deduction, Reading's had the points deduction. In terms of, obviously, that it seems like they're punishing the fans rather than the owners for it. Rob,
definitely. Sorry, go
on. Go
on. I actually agree with what a lot of Greg said. I always feel that we almost need like an Ofsted sort of structure, simply to go in at periods and do right and proper checks again in terms of that side of things. I haven't thought it fully out, but I do think that the EFL are well-meaning. I think that they try to do their best, but if you haven't then got any powers of to do anything, then you have a real challenge. And we're seeing it's becoming more and more common, isn't it? Well, I mean, you talked about at the top late about owners who come in, use it as their vanity project, realize that actually they're not any good at it and they're losing a lot of money, and then just want to ditch it. And this is what I have a problem with, is because the supporters who have followed that club for generations, are the ones left holding the baby. They are always there. They'll never leave. And they're the ones who get punished. And you're right, points deductions for a club don't punish the owner; they punish the fans. The fans then lose league status in some cases, as has happened, and also then lose players and lose more importantly, financial opportunity. Because as well as I do, if you are a championship club and you drop down to League One, the reality is that you will lose commercial deals and you will lose them parachute payments and things like that. It literally happens. Your financial kind of income declines based on the league status. We all know it. So I think that the EFL, and like Greg says, finding somebody 10 grand who's basically got 150 million or 1.6 billion in their account is meaningless. It means nothing. Even transfer embargoes to a point are pointless, because it just then punishes the fans. The club then tries to survive in the league. They don't have the players to equip to do things. I do think it's time for the EFL to maybe look and examine. And again, I'm completely in support of an independent regulator. I think it needs to come in, because some of these people are playing with communities. Let's face it, our clubs. All of our clubs are integral parts of their communities. In my situation, Bradford is a poor social demographic. In general, we're not London, we're not Manchester, and so you're literally then kind of punishing the people who they can't afford to pay 700 quid a year for a season ticket. Our season tickets have just gone up this year from 198, I think it is, to 249. Which is just finished. Which that's great, but the fact is that that's a big substantial rise for that fan base in terms of their income and stuff like that.
No. And I was going to say, Steve, there you go, Rob. You've got a new team to support there, mate. You could buy 3.5 season tickets for you.
Yeah, come watch some Claret and Amber, mate. We'll be all right.
Well, you can go down the road and watch Premier League football for nearly half the price.
I can't see you going full Sean Bean on us though, like that.
No, not
never. You get my point. I think that this cycle's been happening for some time now, and nobody seems to want to basically kind of find a solution to it. Is my opinion. So what do we have to now suffer? Do we have to suffer more Readings? Do we have to suffer more Sheffield Wednesdays? How bad does it need to get until somebody does something and changes something? Because it's been left then to supporters groups like ours to go carry this mantle, when actually really shouldn't we be seeing government intervention in some cases? Or I don't know. I don't know. I haven't got all the answers, but I do know it's painful. And whoever you support, when you're a club has gone bust, when there were opportunities to save it and it's been kind of blocked, or I think it's really, really sad. I really do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was going to say to Rob, because this is the bit where I think what's interesting when we have these chats is that you almost realise there's a bit of a pattern to it. And there is the early spending, and fans understandably are like, yay, spending, because that's how you've been brought up as football fans, to be like, yeah, that's great. then spending what then the EFL's argument is basically the more you spend on wages, the better you are at football. Is they basically argue that there's a causal effect between the amount you spend on wages and you going up the league. Which, if you actually look at that, there's not much of a pattern like in that respect. And Reading and I think to an extent Wednesday are now have been in that phase where you spend loads of money but you're not very good. And then they're the teams that are in big trouble. And I always use the example where the team that cheated at financial fair play and got worse, which is spectacular. You've got Man City winning Champions League, Reading spent all this money and got worse. Similar-ish sort of thing at Wednesday. You're not necessarily getting worse, but you're not getting better for the money you spend, right? What we haven't spoken about is that when that makes your business, when it makes the business debt-laden, and that it then starts damaging your ability to be bought by other people because they look at it and go, I could buy Reading for, say, 25 million. I'll then immediately inherit a business that's losing hundreds of £1,000s a month because it's been set up badly to run. Now, to give Dai Yong some credit, which makes me feel a little bit sick, is the current negotiations are apparently like fairly debt-free. So he'll write off some of the debts, but wants the full valuation of how you go. So you see this sort of cycle going through. Now, again, making myself feel slightly ill. To give the EFL some credit, one of the best things that they did for us, I think, was they put us on this business plan that was basically, if you don't adhere to this business plan, that is about reducing your costs, getting some money in from transfer sales and starting to run as a more sustainable business, we'll hit you with points deductions and we'll hit you. Now, my issue with that is the points deductions bit and how late it was brought in. So it's basically like look, we're going to sort you out if you don't run, and that's within their power because that's league rules, right? So they're able to say, if you don't sort this out, points deductions. But that's still reliant on the owner giving a toss. Like the moment where the EFL's blind spot is when the owner stops giving a toss. And that's where the help is needed the most. Where you can say, like, look, at a point where you have now become, there is now one individual, as Steve said, not just destroying a club, but destroying a community, destroying if you want to call it an SME, if you want to talk politics language, you want to talk a small medium business, but it's integral to local community, that's got social value all the way through. That's when you've got to get these rescue packages in and be like, look, this is broken, like in the same way that you should be doing when other businesses fail. Now, we sort of touched on this the other time, but where I find it really tricky to get my head around it is, as a general person, I'm a sort of quite free market sort of bloke. Like I like to think it goes in, but you've got to correct it when things absolutely stink, and that should be applied to all parts of like our lives. I mean, like the trains don't work. Maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe when there's no competition, you shouldn't have a competition set. You shouldn't be set up like this. And so that's where I think we need the help, is on the emergency packages, and the incentive is there to be saved. And that's where the EFL have got better as they've been under new ownership, under new management going through. They have better, and they have got a bit more responsible and a bit more responsive to fan demands. But I think my overall plea to, like, not just Rob, but Steve, hopefully, you know what? I don't want to speak to Steve for years because everything's going to be sorted. But what the best thing we can do is team up, and that goes against everything that football fans stand for, because we're naturally partisan. It's just like there's things about Swindon being in some shit, and it took all I could to write a tweet saying we stand with Swindon, and actually, all I'm thinking, like, I hope Swindon. We managed to style it out. Is I hope Swindon don't go bust so we can beat them 6-0 every week again. And it's like, and that sort of like, that's the level of like solidarity football fans are comfortable with. But it's like, I've seen Sheffield United fans come out and say nice things about Sheffield Wednesday because they're like, look, we don't want you to vanish. Like, but that's where the strength lies. And I said this last time, but the reason the Super League didn't happen wasn't because Liverpool fans protested or Man City fans protested or United fans protested. It's because they all protested at the same time and sent a real message that, oh, hang on, you've got the tone completely wrong of this. And businesses of that size really care about stuff like corporate reputation. And so they were like, they got the willies put up them. So I think if you want the EFL to get stronger, football fans have got to get used to working together a little bit more and lobby together. and also look, and look, this is me being a PR professional, but and also that's a great story for media to get attention for. It's it's not just Reading fans protesting; it's Wycombe fans came and stood with us on the training ground. It's not just Reading fans invading the pitch. The Port Vale fans were superb and supportive as we came down. Bolton fans stood with us to boo Dai Yong on the 16th minute. That sort of thing. It's that's how I think you get to a point of a bit of change. Is you can't just be your own fans. We're gonna have to do it together. And that's quite a warm and cuddly message that I think football fans struggle with, because you spend most of the game calling each other wankers. But
Yeah.
it's doable. And it is doable when you come down to the back core of it. It's look, you can bang on about I hate this, I hate that, but you don't want to see other football fans go without a football team. That's devastating.
Yeah.
You can talk that up a bit.
Rob, anything you'd like to add about the EFL? Anything that you'd maybe change?
I think Steve and Greg have pretty much covered most of it, but I can't wait for the regulator. I've spoken to Clive Betts, the local MP up here, about it, and everything that's outlined in the regulator, when it eventually does come in, is bad news for Chansiri, because I don't think he would agree with it. And I don't think he'd sort of play any part in making sure that he ticks all them boxes to get a license. So the quicker that comes in, then the better for me. EFL wise, I don't really have an opinion on him, because is what it is. Their test, to me, their fit and proper test is, have you got money? There you go, you can have a football club. And we've seen that with Chansiri. He's spunked a hell of a lot of money. He sold the training ground to himself, which has ultimately cost us points in the league. So if anyone does want to come in and buy us, then they've got to negotiate the stadium as well, on top of everything else that he wants for the club. So the debt at the minute is skyrocketing. And if we do go down, then I can see that ultimately sort of killing us in the long run. Yeah,
100%. So between us, obviously, we spoke about the EFL. If we were to pick a top 5 things, obviously the regulator is going to be number one, to protect football clubs and just the whole football package and ownership, bad ownership. What would you guys feel that need to be in that top 5?
Fan engagement would be number one. You've seen that in Germany, in the model they have over there in terms of fan ownership in their clubs. Wednesday have an engagement panel, which doesn't even include their own supporters trust, which is just bizarre in a sense. The trust basically argued against the chairman, and they got put on the notice step in never being seen in an engagement panel again. And now it's just full of sort of people that just sit there and nod their heads. You see the minutes get put online, and you just think, what are we asking? What are we wanting? What sort of questions we're putting to the chairman, and they're not getting sort of asked. Yeah. So that'd be number one for me. It'd be a sort of fan ownership sort of model, like a 51-49 sort of model. Whether that is tenable, then we can only wait and see.
Yeah.
Steve, I actually think that it's one of the things that we've been discussing at Bradford City. It's been mentioned a few times about the possibility of fans being able to buy the club. However, when you start to look at the information, it is a minefield of various different things, and I think that the EFL could do more to basically make that possibility, because fan ownership in Europe is substantial. Businesses come in as part of that ownership and invest. It's regulated and it's safe. So I'd like to do a lot of that. And similar to what Rob was saying, we have our own supporters board that are the official kind of conduit between the club and supporters. And the challenge we've got right now is that I don't think it's unfair that I'm saying it, but the questions that they ask is they just accept the answers. There is no challenge to the club, in terms of what they're giving. So the club will just basically spin any old line just to, and they won't challenge that answer. It's always, well, okay, we'll accept that. I think one question they put in front of the club was about putting pool tables and arcade machines on the concourse, which was a classic. And they haven't done themselves any favors. And we're trying to now, as a supporters group, we're trying to basically kind of take that mandate and be the official kind of conduit, because we will challenge and we want to record the meetings, and so that's nice and transparent for everybody, rather than minutes that come out with we asked this and it's this. So that fan engagement, I think, is crucial. But that opportunity to fans and a community to buy that club and run it sustainably with support from the EFL would, I think, be another major thing for me. Definitely. The regulator goes without saying. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I think it's long overdue, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. No, I think there's some like the only thing I'd add to is that's the sort of thing the EFL can mandate. That's within their power. You can mandate monthly communications, where you can mandate maybe monthly reporting. You could mandate shadow boards or something like that, where you get through. So there's a bit of it, and it's like if the club doesn't agree to its monthly meeting. Like I remember Steve telling me the story last week about it's in the Bradford City Charter that the fans have got to speak to the owners once a month or whatever it was. And the last time
they're supposed to, in their own charter, they're supposed to do and produce 2 opportunities for fans forums with fans in attendance per year, per season. But they actually, our club have broke that. They organised a fans forum with our local BBC radio station, and which no fans were invited. They did it in a studio, and so obviously we challenged them on it and got no answer. But it's that kind of things where they're not accountable. They're not basically. They're just doing what they want. They rush over things and they spin yarns, and then literally the fans have no right of reply in this instance. We can't. We've tried to get hold of our CEO, for example. We can't get hold of him. He ignores us. And it's not to have a slanging match or anything like that. It's more to ask those questions that are really important to supporters. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. So they break their own charter, which I find astounding.
That's the thing, and I think if you reinforce, that's where you want the EFL to have a bit more teeth, is to start reinforcing. Like, so they basically have some things like not paying HMRC or not paying your staff that are immediate points deductions. Start points deducting some of the fan engagement and fan communication. It's like it's as important, it's as important to the well-being of a club that you do it. And like, sure, sometimes it might be lip service. But if you literally put the threat on it, which is definitely within their power, that you have to engage and clearly communicate and provide a quarterly update of how you're intending to run this club, which can then be put on record that if you don't go or you divert from this massively, like you incur some sort of penalty, you can go through. Now, if you got into a position where, I'd hate it to be points deductions, where it's just like, oh, bollocks, we forgot to organise a meeting with the fans and we've just cost us 3 points. But you know what I mean? It's like some form of incentive or mandate that stops it, where that's the sort of thing where the EFL can just back fans up a little bit. And
that's been one of our demands, Greg. I mean, Rob touched on it as well. If our owner came out and said, right, this is a short, medium and long-term plan for this club, not giving away any kind of things that are going to affect us on the pitch, but, you know, like a proper business does it, a proper business plan that says, right, these are our short-term objectives, medium-term objectives, etc., etc. And this is the timeline that we're running to, right? And we're going to commit to 3 fans forums per season, in which we come back to you and we give you a report and an overview on those metrics. Then I think as supporters, we go, I think 1, you get more patience from supporters. 2, you get basically supporters being prepared to pay a price for a season ticket because there was a structure and a plan there that you could go, I can back that. And if it's a case of it's 2-3 years of transition, but I know what the club are doing, and the club are then reporting back and taking the responsibilities serious to their biggest asset, by the way, because supporters are their biggest asset. I don't care what anybody says. They come in, week out, they spend their money home and away, and they literally buy merchandise and all that sort of thing. But if you had that plan and you had metrics being reported, then I would say that would solve a lot of problems within clubs around the country, because you can challenge them on that, and the EFL, more importantly, Greg, can challenge them on that.
Yeah.
They can say, you put those metrics in. This is your business plan, and it has to be submitted to the EFL as well. So the EFL can best say, right, we've got your business plan. You made kind of promises, and I'm not saying that we hammer somebody, because we know in business plans things change because of the climate that's out there. But give supporters something that they can go, right, because we take pride in our grounds. We take pride in our clubs. So, if we're their biggest investor, which we are, then what's the plan for our money? How's it being spent? What are you going to do with it?
The interesting thing about that as well is, look, and there'll be a few people listening to this and thinking, bloody hell, they're being idealistic. And that wouldn't you think? It's just like, yeah, we probably are, but that sort of system wouldn't necessarily fix all problems, but it would certainly flag red flags up quicker.
Yeah.
And you would see the start of a problem quicker. And that's always what I think, and especially what I'm worried about with Wednesday, is you need some orange flags to start going up. And by the time the EFL clocked that Reading were an absolute basket case and started trying to do something about it, we were too far gone. And you're just like, oh, hang on a minute. If there'd been some flags here, there'd been some flags here, or there'd been some flags right at the bloody start, or the very moment one football club associated with our owner went bust, and then another one did, and you're like, guys, come on, like, there's anything that can sort of send a flare up a little bit earlier. But by the time, if we were the Titanic, the EFL came to us when we were all frozen and hanging onto that door with Jack and Rose. And like, it's like we're Leonardo DiCaprio being like, look, Rose, budge over, mate. We could stay on here. It's an extended metaphor, but it's there for you. It's like they just got to us too late when we could have been going. We should have been the ones, like, I'm going to keep this Titanic analogy going. We should have been the ones shouting, "There's an iceberg! There's an iceberg!" Turn, and we never turned, and it was just like we crashed straight into it, and the EFL got there too late, and then it's going to go through. So, and look, on top of everything else, and then and then we're all saying the same thing. On top of everything else, you need a higher power to come and do a bit of a rescue job when you come in. But the big elephant in the room is that there is a difference between company law and private limited businesses and the stuff that EFL can look after, and that's where the scary bit is, because that's when you're ultimately the least powerful. It's like, as much as we hate saying it, you are still a private limited company in the most part. It's why, and so an owner or a benefactor can do what the hell they want, really. Now, our argument is, and that's why we focus so much on the government side of it, is that needs to start being undone, and you need to start reflecting as football as a whole as a game of community value. And that you can't just rough shotgun things. And look, businesses fail. Not as many businesses have failed in football. Like, if as many other businesses went out of business in the sector as they do in football, you'd be like, we have got to do something about this, because this is unbelievable. This is an epidemic of failure. So that's what the government should do, and they should try and unwind it. And I don't understand why you wouldn't, because it's such a vote winner. I think we've got there's a Tory MP called James Sunderland who's been fantastic for us. He's the MP for Bracknell, which is just outside of Reading. He might be the only Tory MP that keeps his seat this year, because I can't get over how fantastic he's been and how well engaged he's been and how he's put it forward. Like, Matt Rodder, our Labour MP, has been superb as well, and they've been superb together. And the cynic in me goes, it's 2024, the year of mega elections. But good, that's what they should be. They should be being accounted. We've been lucky that Reading Borough Council is full of Reading fans. We've been lucky that the Lib Dem Council is full of Reading fans. Go political, because you've got to go political, because the problem's that big. The EFL can deal with the small and medium problems, and I think the EFL and sorry, Steve, I'm going to sound like I'm taking the mick here. For the place where Bradford City are at, the EFL can sort that out. And they can help sort that out, and they can go through. Where the place where us and Wednesday are at, or could be going, we need bigger help. It needs to be bigger than the EFL and go through. The EFL can nip it in the bud, but when the rot's really set in, you need government to come and rescue you.
Rob, have you had any dealings with the EFL during your campaigns?
No, we haven't. We've had dealings with the FSA and Clive Betts, local MP, but as in EFL itself, no, we've not had. any sort of dealings with them as of yet.
And where, in terms of like Titanic analogies, whereabouts do you feel that Sheffield are at the moment?
I think you can see the iceberg in the distance on the horizon.
Really?
We're slowly going towards it. No, we haven't hit it as of yet. But the way it's going, it's gonna be iceberg dead ahead. So
just remember, took the Titanic a long time to think.
Sorry, Rob. Are you worried about the long-term financial stability of the club? Has he squirreled kind of money and things like that you've seen, or?
For the long-term future of the club, I am very worried. I think the uptake in season tickets this season, he relies heavily on that money. He relies heavily on match day income. It was the biggest earner in the accounts recently. He's put player wages up from last season. I'm guessing that were a promotion bonus, but if you're putting wages up, you're putting everything up in the stadium, and you're not covering that with your match day income, then the club's only going one way, sadly.
Yeah, we've got a similar situation because we sold 15,000 season tickets, which for League Two, as you know, is a phenomenal effort last season. However, I've seen various things pass in front of me today, which I can't fully verify, but suggestions are we've sold around 6,500, 7,000 with the early bird special, whereas last season, obviously 15,000 at the end of an early bird, that is a substantial drop in revenue into the club, if that's true. And that's going to be problematic from a playing budget point of view. But again, I got asked, well, we've got to do more protests, but the biggest protest is happening because the fans are talking with their wallets right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this question, do you think the football pyramid, obviously the Premiership, obviously a lot of money in there, and there's the parachutes. For me, I think clubs are trying to chase that dream too much. Obviously, owners are wanting that big carrot, obviously the Premiership, and they're just blowing the load. Like Chansey, that first season, Rob spent an absolute fortune, and for me, he's now trying to play catch up. I think we need to do away with the parachute money straight away, because we're rewarding clubs for failure basically from relegation. I know it's a big drop in Premiership to Championship, but for me it just doesn't help. I don't know what your thoughts are, guys.
Boy, I think so. Look, making this about Wednesday briefly, I think staying in the Championship is where you'll see is your iceberg, because I was of the opinion when we were in the Championship, you're only one good season away from the Premier League and all the riches it comes. And if you've got an owner that's essentially a bit of a gambler, or has gambled on that, or shown it, they'll always be. It's like you've all seen gambling addicts. It's like if you're just one spin away from reclaiming it, or one spin away from reclaiming it back. The moment you go to League One, you're 2 seasons away. You're 2 trips to the casino away from the promised land, and that's when your interest goes. You go through parachute payments. I think are problematic in a whole host of ways, but I think I just changed to what you can spend it on. And so, look, parachute payments should be about. You've got to cut your cloth for your income and how you go through. What you shouldn't be allowed to do with your parachute payments is immediately send them straight back onto players and subsidising Premier League wages. Whereas I think if you got into well-run businesses should have salary drops for relegation release clauses, and all the rest of it coming through. You've got to do something to it. Where I think the football fan issue with parachute payments is if you see parachute payments and you go, oh, bloody hell, now they've bought a £7.5 million striker. And you're like, oh, hang on, we haven't got that. That's the bit we go, well, if you were to say the £7.5 million has to be invested into club sustainability, and look, I've got no idea how you do this, but it goes into non-playing staff, so you can keep the tea lady employed. You can keep that bit. You can use it to subsidise like a ticket sale loss, because that does happen. It's like Reading were sold out every season in the Premier League, and then we go down. Then you lose about 50. You lose about 5,000-6,000 straight off the bat, right? That's what that money should be covering, not your ridiculous stuff. You've got to sell your players. It's just like that. I think that's where football fans get upset with parachute payments. It's not so much that you get them, because I understand why you get them, because you go from having all the wealth of the Premier League to significantly less, and that blow needs to be cushioned. When you think, especially when you think about, like, what if you got relegated by a dodgy penalty, or you got relegated by like your best players out for 6 months injured and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You need some financial cushion to help that out. I just don't think it should immediately go back onto players. I think it should be related into the club, and that would soften the annoyance around it. But
I'd be all right with if it was invested in youth policy, though, Greg.
Yeah,
because you're then making your club sustainable potential for the future with young players coming through, being moulded, and then sold.
Yeah,
you know, which I'd agree with that in terms of playing structure. But you're right. I don't think it's fair that these guys come down and buying up left and centre to try to get quickly back.
I was going to say, until someone buys a 10-year-old for 11 million or something like that, and but look, that's where I think I think you create a situation where 3 come up and 3 go down, and then the same 2 out of 3 will always seem to go back up. Doesn't feel especially helpful, and then that creates a situation where, in order for clubs like Reading, Sheffield Wednesday, going through the thing, start spending ludicrous money because they've got to beat the parachute payment money just to be competitive. Do you know what I mean? So it creates a situation where you get more recklessness because you've got to try and compete with it, rather than it doing what it should do, which is protect clubs from getting absolutely panged and happening to basically what happened to Bradford. When you see clubs fall down, it was to stop stuff like that happening, where you just fall like a tree down the league.
Yeah. Rob, what about yourself? You think?
I think I agree with Greg. I think it should be invested in off-field stuff, so like facilities, staff. Like our training ground and our stadium had a lick of paint for years and years. Like players are getting changed in shipping containers. Like it's just ludicrous the way it's going. So yeah, I think that money you get for getting relegated from Premier League, it should be there to cover your staff wages. You make sure you've got like your kit man there, your tea lady, staff in the club shop. It shouldn't just go straight onto like a £15 million player. Like that's where fans are getting frustrated. Because if you're coming down and you're getting 90 million coming down and you're blowing that on a squad that goes straight back up, then you get that abundance of riches again, don't you? And if you're a yo-yo club like Norwich, who did it for 5 years, up down, like they're just getting it every year. So yeah, it should be invested in other areas rather than the playing side.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question because Rob actually touched on it earlier. Obviously, it's going to be a different answer. I think Steve and Rob's answer to Greg's. Obviously, setting the groups up. Have you had any opposition from fellow fans? We'll start with Rob because I know you mentioned what happened at a game. Yeah,
I think when we first started out, it was more sort of 70-30 against. But as it's been going on, and obviously the more bad decisions that Chancery has made, the tide has massively shifted towards wanting him out. The protests that we've done, we've had support. They've got bigger and bigger on each one. It's a bit of a tricky one now, because of the way that the season's panning out. But the Leeds game, which was the last process that we did, we've had fans smash like leaflets out of his hands. We had people that volunteered and helped us pinned up against walls. I was spat at twice by 2 separate fans. So yeah, it comes with obviously standing up for what you believe in. Like it's your right to protest. If you think something's going wrong at your club, you are more than able to stand up and voice your discredit in your opinion. But you're gonna get issues with whatever you do. Like even if you're Chancery in, you're gonna get abuse off someone who's Chancery out. It's like at the end of the day, you are bringing it on yourself. But at the end of the day, if that brings something good out of the club or makes something happen, then you can stand up with your head held high, I'd say.
Yeah, we'll go with Steve because I know you were getting pelters on Twitter today saying when's the next protest and what's happening because you seem to have gone quiet.
I think this is the biggest challenge for us. So we've gone from fickle supporters who basically kind of were wary, and we have to prove this and we have to prove that and stuff like that, to now a protest every 2 seconds. And I think the challenge we've got is that it's moves and counter moves for us at the moment in our position. If we start doing protests every 2 seconds, they become numb to it. They become meaningless and they lose their value. So you have to be strategic in how you do it. But we've got, as you see, I get that often on our socials. I get protests. I've got, you're not a true fan. You disgust me. It's all personal. You kick the shit out of you when I see you. And then that's not even the kind of tweets that I get, the private messages that tell me that I'm, if I'm seen again, I'm going to basically get jumped and all that malarkey. So there's but as Rob says, if you believe in something, then and the reason we put this together was because we didn't think that the official supporters group were representing supporters as they should be doing, and they weren't challenging the club effectively. And then we've got an owner that's like Lord Lucan that we never hear from, never see. So it's a balancing act, because you've got, I think for us, and I don't know if it's the same with you guys, Greg and Rob, but we have a situation where you almost have like generational kind of apathy. There are some generations who just want to go support the club, and we get, well, I've watched Bradford City and they've always been lower league for most of our lives, so literally. Then you get that, well, if you're so interested, buy the club yourself. We get that a lot as well. And then various other things. So you have this generational aspect. The younger fans are very, very kind of enthusiastic about protesting and things like that. You get then like I'd say 30 to 50s who are, okay, give us a pitch. Why should we protest? Why should we do this? And then you get the kind of older generations who it takes a lot to get them to a stage where they want to protest. And they all have differing views. But generally, for the most part, what's happened is that we've just kept consistent. We've been around and we've done things that we try to keep talking. But I've come to a conclusion. I'm never going to be able to please every single fan. I'm never going to, and that's on both sides. I've got fans who will say, well, we want to be protesting every week, when strategically it doesn't make sense to do so. And we've got to give the club a chance to reply, because they'll hang themselves if they don't. So we've got a situation where Stefan Rupp's made a statement. He's made some kind of sound bites there that are promises in a lot of cases. So we've now got to let them hang themselves, because we'll be back then and we'll be protesting very, very kind of in the faces, and we will be basically holding them to account. But if we're protesting just for the sake of protesting, then what's the point? What does it deliver for us? And that's my challenges right now, is that, I want to do something, but the timing is not quite right. And so we have to wait. We have to wait for the club to kind of commit a faux pas or not action what their owner has said is going to happen. And it's frustrating when you've been called out everything and we've given up, and I get all that. You've given up, you've gone out the first hurdle, and when you put as much time into it, and I'm sure you guys, Greg and Rob, will agree, there's a lot of time that goes into this. We don't get paid for it. It's long hours. You get a lot of abuse. But at the same point is when a new owner comes in or structure changes and they get all these things, then it'll be, oh, we're so happy with the club now from everybody. We're getting what we want. And they won't remember it was our group at Bradford that basically kind of set this off, that caused a protest, caused a kind of reaction from the club. We won't get any of that recognition. But ultimately, we're not really in it for that. We just want a club that we can support moving forward. That's it. And for younger generations to be able to support in Claret and Amber. That's all we're after.
Yeah.
And Greg, I can't imagine we've seen.
Oh no, we had a bit early doors. It's I don't think it's ever quite as extreme because like we formed when again when we could see the iceberg, but like the accusation again, there's a couple. And also, so Steve's right. There's a generational thing, but we also had. I actually think one of the worst things that happened. We had prominent women in our group, and they took one in particular took the most pout as, oh, you're doing this for attention, you're doing this for that, and it's like I'll tell you, she's not. She's not, and it's just like, oh, you're doing it to be famous with the fans. I'm like, a fucking famous Reading fan, do me a cheesy. It's like it was like yeah, that's it. I want to get lauded in front of like 12 people. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just like, no, I don't like it's nonsense. Like, but we took pelters because we start off, we had no idea what we were doing. Like, and so the first where I will give us a big pat on the back, which is inadvertently giving me a big pat on the back, which I don't mind, is our comms were good. And so we always explained every decision. We always explained this. And then when we got a bit better at all of this protest malarkey, we did what Steve has alluded to. We made protests that were essentially age appropriate. Oh, lost Lee. But yeah, we essentially made protests that were like age appropriate and appealed to. We got a line which was basically, is it Stone Island or River Island? Like, does this feel like a naughty protest or does this feel like Reading's a great family club protest? So we had stuff like Clown Day and the red cards that was a site family. And then what happened? We get pelters from the kids being like, what's this going to do? What's this going to do? So we threw tennis balls on the pitch. Young kids loved that. Facebook fucking furious. It was just like, you
can't win.
Do you know what I mean? So it's just fun. And then you've just got to find peace and zen in your decisions. That like you're never going to make anyone happy at the same time. You do something that fans on Twitter love, fans on Facebook will probably hate it. You do something that looks great on TikTok, your granddad thinks it's a waste of time. But you've just got to keep on doing it. And the way we've been able to bring the fans with us is we've communicated exceptionally well. But Steve's right, so you've also got to pick your moments. Like, and we've had it where it's just like, you haven't done anything in ages. It's like, one, we're very clear we have jobs. Two, we're also really transparent on money that we've raised and what happens with it and goes through. So we're all right. But for example, at the start of the season, we ballsed up where we're going to do I will say that I was never a big fan of it, but we were going to do a protest at a pre-season friendly, throw socks on the game, on the pitch and get it stopped. And then it basically found out that Ruben Sellers, it was going to be his first game. And I was a bit like, look, you don't want it, not his first game. No, that's a bit miserable. Come on, let's get him in. Oh, and we got pelters because it was socks and socks were lame. And then we got pelters for cancelling socks because socks were lame. And it was like, we were just like, it was the same people giving us pelters for socks in the first place that were having a go at us for cancelling socks. And I'm like, I've got a list. Do you reckon I wanted to do socks at all? It was hard to say and hard to throw. Like it was just like I wanted it was like thing, but we learned from it and we're there like, right, okay, and we communicated why we did it. So yeah, I mean, look, we've been in a slightly more privileged position is that there wasn't really a die-in movement. There was a oh, it's not as bad as you think movement, which doesn't have the same hostility that comes through. But I think we mitigated a lot of the risk by communicating really well and being clear and following up. And after Sockgate, the one thing we learned was whether or not we think it's right or not, we go at it. And I think we don't back down from a decision again. And I think one of the best things we did for that was, I reckon, when we did a protest at Eastleigh because it was on the TV. And that was the big game changer because it was the first time we'd done anything away from home rather than at the Medeski. The Select Car Leasing. It's the first time, and our justification was on television, and it felt like we were punching down because Eastleigh were conference. They beat us anyway, so it sort of worked out. But it was like, and I would say that was about 70-30 against. And I said, no, we've got to we all said, no, we've got to stick with it. It's on TV. It's on TV. We don't stop. And we're a bit wobbly in the group about doing it because the reaction had been like, oh, I don't think you've got this one right. And then we basically briefed ITV to and fair play to Sam Matterface, was he reached out to us and was like, I want the full background of everything. And we basically got a chap called Adam, pulled together a briefing dog. And we basically had ITV, Ian Wright, Sam Matterface. When the protest happened, where we threw tennis balls and money on the pitch, they explained exactly why it happened, exactly what was happening, exactly all the things that we're doing. And they made it about fans. And the reaction you then had, that was probably a big turning point for us as a campaign group because everyone was like, oh, you spoke to ITV. oh, I didn't think that was a good idea, and it's actually really paid off. So you've got not a lot of people know a lot of things about how these things work, and so like I remember seeing like it's the only time I actually did want a bit of credit. It was just like loads of people going fair play Sam Matterface. I went, fuck me. Do you reckon he just he got that on his own? I was just saying like it's the only time I've been like, no, actually I do want a bit of credit for that. But it was but no, that's the thing. And I think, yeah, if I was to give us a pat on the back for anything, it's that we've communicated where we're coming from. So even if you don't agree with it, we'd be like, we've at least explained ourselves. And that's all you can do. And there's always like a logic to it. And it's always like, we're doing this one, which is a bit more kid friendly. And it's just sort of like, because we want 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds and families to be able to take part because it's their club too, right? Can't just do everything that feels a bit naughty. And like, because you get like, we had a big chunk of fans who hated the pitch invasion. I hated the pitch invasion. I didn't want that to happen because it was like, I'm a football fan first. I want to watch a game of football, but I was delighted when it did and when it paid off and everything that happened. And I was happy to be on a pitch and do it, but it made me feel deeply uncomfortable. But if you explain everything you do, what else can you do, right? As Rob said, if you're true to yourself, what else can you do? And maybe one day the fan that spat on him will apologise because I thought that was disgusting. Like I don't understand how you can get that angry at something that is not inflicting it upon you.
Yeah, and he's got, like Rob said, he's got a right to protest. Everyone has. Yeah. He feels strongly about it. So on Twitter, obviously, Reading, Wednesdays, Morecambe come together about football ownership. How important do you feel that the football community should stick together to obviously help build a bigger picture and obviously just pull together in times of, because I remember the Scunny United I went to one week where they didn't think they'd had a club the week after. It was absolutely awful. We could see how emotional fans were there, and then the week after went back and they'd been saved. Obviously, I think everyone got on board with that. Grimsby fans, obviously, they didn't want to lose a local derby. So I think it is important. What do you guys feel?
You won't hear me shut up about it. Like, I think it's the single most important bit. Is why I'm doing this. It's like we've got to. Like one club, nothing. There's 92 clubs in this football league. You can ignore one or two. You can't ignore 72.
No. If more clubs and more fans start coming together and create an absolute tsunami of sort of like action, then the EFL and other governing bodies cannot ignore it. Like, all right, it's us, Morecambe and Reading. Like next week, it could be Bradford and other teams get on board. There could be 9 or 10 supporters groups that suddenly come together, and if it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then nobody can ignore it. Like something will have to come of it.
Yes, I'd agree. Yeah, I think fan power is massively underestimated. I think about things like 20's Plenty, for example, where fans unite and talk about kind of admission prices, because everybody can get behind that and they understand it. It doesn't matter what club you support, you could be fierce rivals, but the fact of the matter is that everybody has an understanding about these things. And at the same time, you only have to look at the commentary when there is a club in trouble, that comes from other supporters. Oh, it's horrible. They need to get out. I stand with you, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't. Football rivalry goes out when a club is in trouble. I remember the Bury's kind of woes and, people from other clubs donating money, to their funds and things like that. I just think that that's what we're good at in this country, in all 92 league clubs, is that if there is a club in peril or there is literally kind of like, some dodgy guy who's, owning a club, I think most fans will get behind it, to be fair.
Yeah. So, gents, we've tipped over the hour mark. I think we've covered a lot of bases. It's been great to learn about, obviously, different ownerships. Obviously, Rob, first time meeting you, fellow Wednesday. It's good to talk and hear your story. Greg, you speak so well. about Reading and about football as a whole. Likewise, Steve. I'm going to pass the last message on to you guys. What's your last words to your owners, to fellow fans, and then the football world in general?
I'll let Greg go first, I think.
Yeah, go on, Greg.
To my owner, I'd say, what a lovely chap you are, and I've enjoyed your tenure, and I think you should move on very gently. Owner, please sell the club. Like, you had a crack at the Prem, didn't work. This is bigger than you. This is bigger than your business. Sell the club. Reading fans, just remember we're not sold until we're sold, and try and keep your eyes on the prize. In that, yes, I think we're going to stay up now, and our players and fans and managers deserve a little bit of happiness, but keep your eye on the ball in terms of if the deal goes west for whatever reason, we're back into a horrible place. And the football as a whole, like, I think that last question is a really nice one to finish on. Like, stand up together, start putting aside some of the rivalries outside the 90 minutes and start thinking about it, because I think the biggest one is, like, to borrow from the old national lottery, but in a bad way, is it could be you. It happened real quick for Reading, and it will happen it happens real quick when someone loses interest. And be aware when your club's spending a load of money you don't think it's got. Like, that's the time to start speaking.
For my owner, it's either sell up or be an owner, be a responsible owner, get involved. He's made a start. We'll see what happens. He needs to employ a CEO that actually is effective rather than the one that we have right now, who's cost us quite a lot of money in various things and has not made fantastic decisions. So, that's the reality to the owner. To the fans, we can't protest every week, guys. That's the reality of it. We need to be strategic and we need to be smarter. The people that are in place are ingrained in there right now, and so we have to play our cards very close to our chest. We're not going to tell you everything that we're doing right away publicly in social media kind of rooms, because that gives we know the club's watching, and so that's but just support us and and be passionate about it and believe in it. We are planning things. We are basically doing what we're supposed to be doing. We are trying to represent you, and that's it. And then to the wider football community, I think it's more so of, don't be blinkered by what your clubs are doing. If you've got a great engagement, and I'm thinking like people like Andy Holt at Accrington, who is a superb owner and has kept that club going and very, very communicative. The guy at Notts County, who's just released this week, a really, really good plan. I think that, outside of the Premier League, there's this whole football world of good clubs, good structured clubs, but there's also bad owners within those clubs. Do something about it. Be united with your fellow supporters. Talk to other groups like, Greg's or mine or Rob's. Go talk about, what you can do. And, even if it's for advice, is there something going on here? Do you think we should maybe look at something? Because you'll find that there's this wealth of knowledge that suddenly comes out from groups who've actually had to do this. And believe me, there's all of us on this kind of thing to this show tonight. We don't want to be doing this. We just want to really support our clubs, go for a beer with our mates on a Saturday, enjoy the game, go out afterwards and, either cry because we lost or basically, celebrate because we won. It's not a job that we want to do. We don't get paid for it. But the fact of the matter is that we care passionately about our clubs. And if, as a wider football community, if you care about your club, do something about it.
And lastly, Rob.
The message to Mr. Chance here is sell up and go, or be more transparent with us. Appoint a CEO, appoint a board of directors, appoint a sporting director. Do it properly. It's just him at the minute, and that only counts for one thing, and that's downhill as a club. We as a group, we're not going away. We're definitely not going away, especially how the club's been mismanaged and ran off the field. So we will be doing a lot more, especially if there's relegation. There will be a lot more planned. So the supporters, it's simply what we've been saying for the last few weeks and months: is back the team, not the regime. You know, we're in a position now where we didn't think we would be come September, October, November time. Like, we all thought we were dead and buried, and now Danny Rowell's got us into a tremendous position. And if he keeps us up, then he deserves manager of the season for me. So our message to the chairman is simply sell up and go, or be more transparent, come out and tell us where we are as a club, where we're going as a club, what we can do. Don't ask us to pay for a tax bill, because that is just an absolute disgrace. So yeah, that's my message.
Yeah, gents, it's been an absolute pleasure. You all speak so passionately about your club. A last message from me: I think we all love our football club. These guys do it because they love the football club. Don't abuse what they do, or if you've got a disagreement, ask them questions, learn about why they're doing it, because at the end of the day, they all want the best interests of their football club. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all, and thank you, all you guys, for your time. Steve, Rob and Greg, it's been an interesting listen. Thank you everyone for watching. Please smash the like button and just share it about, and let's just all pull together, because football, it's for the fans. Thank you everyone for watching, and have a good night.
Cheers.
Yeah, bye.